Thank you. So gentlemen, we've talked a lot about the budget over the past couple of weeks. We had all the elected officials in last week. We put the invitation out to everybody, asking them who wants to come talk, who wants to come discuss. Um, we got them in. We got their requests. We noted a lot of things that we talked about. Sales tax decline, putting the budget in a, shall we call it, challenging area, looking at growth not being there as much as what we had originally planned on, looking at pulling back a little bit on growth for next year, talking about bodies that people would like to add to their particular departments. At this time, we're probably not going to be able to make those accommodations, at least unless we change some things around. Tonight, I just wanted to talk about what areas of the budget do you have concerns about and you want to get into a little bit more. Mr. Cronin, I know you had mentioned you wanted to talk about the communications department, so I will yield the floor to you.
Okay. I had some discussions earlier in the year with Jennifer regarding this, and if you go to page 56 of the budget, I think it kind of explains to you, I guess, my concerns, 56 and 57.
Okay.
Now, understand that we combined the printing office into the communications department. Was that about a year ago, Jennifer? Okay. So, but it, pardon me? Yeah.
Do you want to come join us up here real quick? Sorry.
And I guess what my concerns is, if you look at first of all, at the top grid, and you look at the authorized personnel, we went from 5 people in 2015 to 12.6 in 16, and now we're proposing 13.6, so another full-time employee there. But I think more tellingly, if you look at page 57 and you look at the total, actually you don't look at 57, look at 56, the very bottom line. If you go from 15, we are 388,000 for that department. 16, 796, it darn near doubled. Then 17, it went to 918, appropriate amount. It was okay, and then we're requesting over $1 million for the first time this year. So I understand that the printing office got combined into this, but essentially since 15, we went from $400,000 over $1 million, and to me, you know, that's a lot of increase when the rest of the county budget's pretty static. So that is why I put the notation in to the chair that I would like to get a little bit of understanding why we're spending more than double, 2.5 times what we did in 2015. And the same way our employee base went up from 5 to proposed for 13. And other departments, you know, that I'm seeing where we're not getting, like for instance, the prosecutor wanted some more people that I don't think he's getting, and I just want to know why we need another full-time employee in communications for this coming year. And also, you know, it looks to me like we've got a pretty steep escalation of costs in this department, and I'd like to get an explanation of that.
Employees in that department at all. Only new employees that exist in the communications department were added in 2016. That was the communications director and the digital media specialist. All of that other 5 to 12 increase was the print shop that came over. Print and mail services has a division manager. You've got another print manager, mail manager, and the switchboard operators. So that's your other staff. So we added 2 positions in 2016. And then you'll recall early in 2017, Joanne had a conversation with you all about moving a position that was here at the Family Arena to the communications department, and that person is now doing community relations, and it's listed as the community relations manager, who's coordinated all of the new speaker series, is attending all of the chamber meetings throughout the county, coordinating speaking events where we can go and reach folks that we've not been able to reach before at public meetings. So that moved over this year. There's no new FTE request in 2018.
So basically, Molly Dempsey's role now is being brought into this so that 12.6 to 13.6
Yeah.
is the additional, the shifting gears
no.
from Molly
Was
Hills.
it some?
Correct,
Correct.
and you
Okay.
did that transfer earlier this year.
Most of those done by,
And then what was the print, like,
communication.
you know, if you said we rolled the print shop budget over in 16, what were we spending in the print shop prior to this combination? Do you have any
Yeah,
clue?
right behind the
So in that page, it still exists in your budget, so you could always still go find that in the old facility services, page 46. And you can see there, then you had the old positions listed out, and they all are zeroed out now on page 47. You had a supervisor, a building services, a printer, government service rep 1, mail services specialist, and general services worker. And that cost in personnel only was $254,000.
Okay, so if I'm reading then the total, what we were spending in the print shop was, okay, so about $300,000. Right. So if you take that $300,000 and you plug that into what we were spending in 15 for communications, we were spending combined about $700,000 back then. Just, yeah, okay. And now we've gone almost a 30% increase in what, between 16, 17, and now 18. To me, that's considerably higher than any other county department. I think I'm right on that statement, and that's where I have some concerns.
But what you're also looking at is actual numbers from 2015, 16, 17. What we don't always spend everything we appropriate. So your actual appropriation number back in 2015 for all of that activity was $823,000. We only spent $745,000. So if you want to compare apples to apples, we need to look at what was appropriated or what was the actual spend in each of those years.
Okay, well, in
If that makes
16,
sense.
on the bottom of page 56, for 16, it shows 796,841. So that was what was spent in 16. Now, 15, if you add those two departments together, it was again, it was probably somewhere in the vicinity of 700, 800. Then we've got to jump from basically 800,000 in 16 to 900,000 in 17. Now we're going up another million. To me, it looks like we're getting about a 10% escalation every year in that department. That's a question you can ask, I don't know.
What value do we get out of this rather than having another prosecutor or something like that? I think that would be my question. If it, in fact, is that what it is? It's going up.
What's happening? It's in the front.
Two employees.
That's happening.
Even any way you slice it or dice it, okay? We went from $700,000 roughly in 15, 7 and some change, if you go by the numbers in here, to 800,000 to 2017 being estimated at 900,000, and then we're over $1 million for this coming year. And my main concern is, I guess, twofold. One is I heard from the other elected officials loud and clear at the last work session, especially my concerns with Mr. Lomar was pretty important. The fact that if he can't prosecute, you know, the police can catch the bad guys all day long, but if he doesn't have the funds to properly prosecute them, they're gonna get out in the street, and that's a bad situation. And then secondly, I don't see any other department that's had these kind of increases every year like we have that. And myself, we have to put, different levels of what's most important to us for county services. And while communications, I think, is important, I think the prosecuting attorney's office is really important. And then secondly is as far as the communication department, I guess I'm kind of a Luddite in the sense that, I don't watch every Trump tweet every day, and I'm not so certain how much of this money is getting spent for digital media like that some matters to some people and doesn't matter to others. But I sure am keen to the prosecutors' budget, and I'm also really concerned too is what happens where you folks plan on chopping if instead of a 1% budget increase we have a 2% budget decrease. I sure hope it comes out of some of these departments that have had 10% annual increases and not somebody like the prosecutor's office. Sure.
Print shop has entirely radically changed how it serves the county. It's better, it's saving us money on the things that it does, and it's expanded its scope to the things it does. So for instance, all the criticism we used to get about people couldn't find their way around the county campus, the changeover in the signage is that print shop is carrying on now that we have the templates in place, changing out those signs and taking care of that in-house. They're doing printing in-house that we used to go out. Problems that we used to have, for instance, at the Heritage Museum where the cost of those banners was so shocking, they're doing those banners for us in-house now. So there's any number of things that the modernization and control of bringing the print shop into communications has done for us. So they're serving more departments when the departments go out, whether it's the police or the sheriff or workforce development, they're having things that are well suited to looking like the county as a professional agency instead of stuff people just had to type up on their computers and print out. So I think what you're looking at as you look from going from 15 into 16, while you're seeing the Office of Public Information move over, it's those things from facilities maintenance, building services division that are coming in to this department that cause the initial big change in that, because there's $265,000 budgeted in salaries and $24,000 in operating that was coming out of facilities maintenance, adding into the Public Information Office. And yes, there is a change from 16 to 17 that we'll have to parse for you. But the change then from 17 to 18 is really the movement of that employee that was currently employed in the family arena also over into communications on a permanent basis.
It's $140,000
Well, it's also the 2% raise
for the entire department.
department and the changes to any other thing like the budgeting for the health insurance for an open position and all that.
If I'm the only person that has anything else concerned about this, and
Does that mean that the family arena lost a body?
They certainly
Correct.
did.
We did.
So-
Joe, I can clarify a couple of numbers real quick here. I exchanged a couple of text messages with Debbie Salvo. The budgeted 16 number was 943,070. At the very bottom of page 56. The budgeted number for 2016 was 943,070. The budgeted number for 2017 was 918,031, the number right next to it. And if you take this year's budget and you extract the position that was moved from the family arena to get budgeted numbers to budgeted numbers exclusive of additional headcount, the budgeted number for 2018 should be about $960,000. So it's pretty level from 16 to 17, slightly down, and then again pretty level at 18. So, and Jennifer alluded to this earlier. In fact, you can't look at actual numbers versus budgeted numbers because the budgeted numbers are usually higher. So that's why I wanted to shed the light on 16, 17, and 18 budgeted numbers and adjusting budgeted numbers for the position we picked up from the family arena here in communications.
Any other questions? You good with that?
I don't think I'm good with it, but if nobody else has any concerns, I think it's time to move on.
Well, I mean, I agree. It seems to me that this department is growing. I mean, it's a good department, everything, but it's not a necessity. And we got other things that are, and we're not giving them increases, but we're giving this one an increase. This is a lot of fluff right here.
There's no increase this year. The person, you're talking about personnel?
I'm talking about just the general across the board numbers from what Joe was talking about from 2015 to 2018. And I understand you're moving stuff around, but no matter how you explain it, the department's still growing and it's not a necessity to the county. If we're getting down to the brass tacks of things and making cuts, this is not one of those departments that's needed as bad as some of the other ones.
Well, I get what you're saying, but if you look at the operating side of the communications budget at the bottom of page 57, that the budgeted 17 versus the budgeted 18 operating numbers are flat, slightly down, 97,072 to 95,542. So there's no issue in the operating side of it. There is no capital. So then the only other change is in personnel. Personnel's budget in 2017 was $820,000. It's $953,000 now, but that includes the one position that's now in this budget, which with benefits is $90,000, something like that. So the other difference is attributed to the 2% raise, in part. I mean, there's some other flex and changes in benefits of employees from year to year where people will change their health insurance coverages and things like that could make a change as well in some of the personnel numbers that you're seeing here. But I don't think the change from 17 to 18 is as radical as it's being portrayed here. I think it's largely level in 17 to 18, but I get what you all are saying.
But did this department receive any cuts?
No, I don't think there were any cuts. They just.
Do you have that same factor that you just pull out of this? I mean, how, you know that factor that all the elected officials are complaining about?
No, because this is a general fund budget.
When you look at it from the personnel side, though, when I first came on board, we had Jack Gamble and we had Colleen. Okay, and of course some other folks helping. Well, Jack retired, and I think we have a replacement for Jack. But since Colleen's still with us, but we've got this digital media specialist, we've got Molly Dempsey, and we've got our new director now. So we've added 3 positions in what, 3 years?
Well,
2 years?
you can't count Molly. I mean, Molly was a reassignment.
Mm-hmm.
What it's costing communications now, it cost the family arena last year. So there's no change in dollars in county government. It was a reassigned position, but there's no increase in costs there.
Well, even if you discount Molly, we still grew by at least 2, okay?
Well,
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Jennifer's
The
spoken to
director
that,
of
yeah.
digital media specialist,
Right, okay. And I guess one of the, getting, kind of alluding a little bit about what Joe's saying, one of the problems that is passing a budget that is predicated on a 1.25% increase is when it comes time, if that turns out to be a decrease, as trends kind of indicate it could be, then the duties of which departments get chopped don't go to the council, but that's executive privilege if I understand, okay? So bear in mind that when we pass this, what I would call a blue sky, hope everything's good budget, okay? If things go the other direction and we have a significant sales tax decrease, you know, we may not be able to provide input. You know, for instance, I think, Joe, if I get your position, it's the same as mine. I don't want to see Tim Lomar's budget cut. I'd rather see this, for instance, budget cut way before Tim's. So that's the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about. And I would hope that the administration would discuss with us if things do go negative, okay, and you guys proposed cuts. I sure would like to have some input about who we're going to cut and what we're going to cut, okay, because I think that's important. I don't know if the other council has that concern or not.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in response to that, I would simply say that I'm an ex-judge who, as I said at the last meeting, has the fifth grade level of understanding of high-tech stuff. So I think I'm going to be with you, and we're going to make sure we've got the criminals under control before we worry about about communications.
Good. Thank you.
Mr. Hammond?
I think Steve replied, kind of took away what I was going to talk about.
Mike?
Ditto, it's been covered. Thank you.
Okay. Any other areas of a budget that you would like to discuss tonight? Any other areas that you have concerns about? Yes, sir.
Is there anything, Bob, you're the expert on this, is there anything that you've seen that we need, you as a former council member, that you think we need to discuss or take a look at?
Being pretty familiar with the budget, I am honestly at a point with this budget where I think it's done. And as long, I think, as the council understands the way that it was put together, I think you all really do understand what's in front of us here. And a lot of what happens in 2018 is yet to be determined by where revenues go. And we'll have to adjust, as you were talking about, Joe, just a few minutes ago about that. But as far as the budget structure itself is concerned, I think it's done responsibly. And as you know, a lot of work goes into this before you all get a look at it. And I can look all of you in the eye and say, yes, I think this is a responsible budget, given the circumstances. It's a spot that none of us really want to be in, but we're here. And so it'll be up to the council and the executive to be staying in communication, and we'll certainly keep you all apprised as we get into the last couple of months of the year here, and to let you know how things are going. And given the tentative nature of what 18 looks like, we'll be communicating with you, I think, a lot sooner than what we typically do. Typically, we wait for a few months to see how things are unfolding, so we don't get too worried about short-term numbers and 1 or 2 month numbers. But in this case, I think we're monitoring things on a month-to-month basis, and we can keep you aware of that as well.
Mr. Klinghammer?
Thank you for those comments, Bob, and I'd like to kind of formalize that a little bit more if I could, rather than waiting towards the end of the year to, and for us to be somewhat surprised, sometimes happily surprised, and sometimes not so much so. I'm going to ask you to give us a quarterly update instead of waiting and until the end. And specifically, I think the areas that I'd like to see us concentrate on would be sales tax revenues, how we're doing, not according to last year, but towards what we projected to be at each point. And then the other big unknown cost, of course, is healthcare. So I'm going to ask that you give us quarterly updates on those two, and then I'll ask the council to chime in with any other big numbers that we need to just to kind of monitor, so we know where things are.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And as I said, this is kind of a tentative time, and if things are turning to the negative, everybody's going to need to know about it as quickly as possible, not mid-year, third quarter. So
Right.
we'll be happy to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bob?
Dave?
Mr. Chairman? Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to say that I think communication is very important for the county. I can remember, 20 years ago that how bad things were as far as communications, and a lot of things that we had to send out to get printed, and everything from forms and records and things in my department when I was director that they're able to do down in the print shop to save the county a lot of money. With that said, I did have one question regarding the prosecutor's office, that the actual cases, and I don't know if this came up at our last budget meeting, went from 13,000, let's say 14,000, up to 20,000 in 2017. Do we know why we had such an increase in active cases?
Well, I think Mr. Lomar mentioned at one point, we have more officers around the county now.
Yeah, I do
And
remember that.
as he said, when you have more officers, you expect that they would be doing their job, and they have been doing their job. The side effect of that is we have more cases that have to be prosecuted. I think everybody is concerned. Joanne, I think you said this last year, that 63% of our budget is public safety. Is that still the case?
Right, without even getting into what it costs us to run the court. We have an
Can
obligation
you turn
to
that
fund
to
the
you a little bit?
circuit court.
Thanks.
So, and we're refining those numbers and trying to come up with what the support function and all of that is, because that was really raw numbers of sheriff, corrections, police, prosecutor, juvenile, is really what that amassed number was out of the general fund, obviously, we're talking about. I think on the prosecutor's numbers, what you're seeing is a couple of things. One is, as you know, we've pretty much gotten traffic out from under him so that he can actually concentrate on crimes. And Keith's office has done a phenomenal job with taking over traffic. They not only have taken the referrals from him that have gone to our municipal court, but what remaining traffic they have, his staff is actually stepping into the circuit court and handling both those docket calls and those trials. That's freed Tim's lawyers up to take on some of the domestic work that had previously been going through the municipal courts of all the cities within the county. So those domestic cases, a lot of them have moved over into the prosecutor's office. In addition to that, he is trying to ensure that in drug cases that warrants are properly issued, even where you have a cooperating witness. So even though they may take a pass or defer prosecution under certain circumstances with more minor folks, he's trying to make sure that things are handled as they should be. So I think that's why you've seen a climb in cases. Plus, as he explained to you when he was here the other day, when a city within the county puts more officers on the street and they issue more misdemeanor or felony charges as a result of that, it's not just our police department that's feeding them cases, it's every police department in the county. And we have in general, we have some very fine police chiefs who are being very aggressive in their counties in their cities, following through on crime.
Mr. Cronin.
I didn't read every line of every 487 pages of this year's budget, but I say I probably read a lot more significant percentage of this budget than the average congressman read of the latest tax bill before the federal government. But that'd be
This is about 400 pages.
About 400 pages more.
yeah. But I can tell you, I read every line last year because I was chair and my name was on the budget, and I want to make sure. But I'm asking you, Bob, as a council member as well, is there any significant, the bit I have read of this, okay, I didn't see any significant changes. Is there anything that we need to talk about other than what's in it?
It really is, in large measure, a flatline budget.
Okay.
I mean, there's some variation in some of the special funds that are spending some of their capital money. The Parks Department still has a lot of stuff going on. We have the EOC that's in process. So there's a lot of dollars going on there from the standpoint of capital programs that have previously been approved. Operationally, the budget is largely flatlined with last year. The big difference is the revenue side of it. That's the biggest single factor contributing to a lot of the discussions we've had here the last few weeks.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, on parks, talking about parks a little bit, did we ever get, we talked about this last year, did we ever, or Mike, did we ever get, Klinghammer, did we ever get that 5-year plan, that proposal for a 5-year outlay?
I'll let John cover that. John and I have been talking about that, and I think the information that's been coming to us on parks is greatly improved. I don't know that we have a full 5-year plan, but I think we have a much better understanding of where things are going.
Well, all right, couple questions on that particular issue. We've been asking for that for several years, and I know that we got a new park director, so hopefully that'll help. What I'd like to see, John, is just a 5-year plan. It doesn't have to, they're never in concrete, but just an idea of what the plans are as far as development, purchasing, that kind of thing, what park's next. And on the Parks Department, we have a marketing coordinator specifically for parks outside of the communication department? Correct. And how many other departments have their own marketing coordinator outside the communications department?
A marketing coordinator, that would be the only department.
Does the police department have some
They
kind
have
of a?
public
They
affairs.
They have a community relations person
Sorry.
who also does some social media, but also is the person who reaches out to various special groups in the community and meets with people when there's community concern.
Is that a police officer or a civilian?
It's a civilian.
And then we have Val with police department, who's.
That's what
she's-
I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. But
She's also
we have a public affairs officer also in the prosecutor's office, don't we?
we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think I don't think
We've had
that
that
highway and transportation does. I think
Yeah,
we're
the
good there, right?
prosecutor's
Yeah,
Highway does not.
yeah, we're good
Oh,
on that
yeah.
one.
It's been there.
It's been there a while.
Yeah. Your point would be, though,
I'm just, with the size of our communications department, I'm just wondering why we have a parks marketing
Well-
coordinator.
Yeah, if I could talk
Go
to
ahead.
Ryan. You know, Ryan just started a month ago. That's one of the things I've asked him to do, is look at the personnel, look at who does what, make sure we're not having two people doing the same thing, make sure the right hand knows what the left hand's doing. So ask me in a couple months about that.
Joe, I think I know where you're going on that, and I think it's important to note that a lot of, we're good at putting on programs within the parks, but it's a full-time job just telling people and getting people the knowledge that those programs exist. And I think that,
I'm just asking, we do
Yeah.
have a good parks department, I'm not knocking, I just want to, just kind of asking these questions.
It's going to be reviewed.
And then the next question would be, and maybe this is more of an administrative, I don't know if this is a budgetary item, but you have 12 rangers, 2 supervisors and 10 rangers, which is a good fleet. And I would like to see if it's possible to start having them, if it's possible, and Joanne, we talked a little bit about this, but having them administer a little more law enforcement, if that's possible.
Well, they are administered through the police department. So Captain Cook and the Bureau of Special Enforcement provides the law enforcement supervision of the Rangers for about a year and a half now. And so he oversees their training, their equipment, any law enforcement reporting that they have to do. They're non-law enforcement services, so if they're going out to work with kids on those assignments come from the Parks Department. But if it has to do with their law enforcement duties, Captain Cook reports directly, formally to Betty, now to Ryan, about any law enforcement issues he has and how they're performing. And I think it's gone very well. I mean, I haven't had a chance to talk to Ryan about how he feels about it, but I know our former director thought it had greatly increased their efficiency. And also their training and how they handled things for law enforcement purposes. In addition to that, the chief, a year and a half ago at the same time, made the parks a regular part of the zone. They had previously been kind of at the police department told to stay out of the parks. He's made them a regular zone, and so we book our law enforcement guys through that on a regular basis. and they have reportable statistics on how often they're in the parks. And often they're the first ones able to respond because there aren't that many park rangers on at a time. So if the ranger who's on a Monday or something is down at Quail Ridge and it's at Hideaway Harbor that they're having an event, it's going to be his own car from the police department that's able to respond first, and then is joined by the ranger as he can get there.
Well, yeah, and the point would be is, I hate to say this, guys, but I have the most car parks in my area, so.
We don't.
No, we're all familiar. Yeah,
Don't rub that
it's
in.
not a secret.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
by the way, we've rejected all suggestions that we ought to have individual line items for parks in each council district.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
We think that's a bad idea.
That would be a bad idea.
They're all county parks,
Right.
wherever they might be located.
The reason I point this out is because we have all the parks in that concentrated area, Bromosic, Lindenwood, Klondike, Matson, all of them. And when there was a law enforcement issue, they did send them down to, there was a guy running a car around and the Rangers finally caught him. He's been doing it for a while. Sheriff's Department would never show up in time because they're so far or whatever. Rangers caught him in his house field and he was very thankful. So when you told me they're doing that, I think that's a great plan. I just hope that we continue with, like if they're in Klondike and there's a disturbance somewhere in the vicinity where they can get to it quickly, it seems to make a lot of sense to have them work that way, you know?
Well, I know that the chief and Captain Cook have made some, and believe me, the Rangers have been completely cooperative, and from what I understand from Captain Cook, in agreement with it, they've made some significant changes in their equipment and their training. So I think, there's some confidence now that not only may they have come trained as post-commissioned officers, but that they're keeping up with the training that would allow them to coordinate that response with the police department.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's good. I like to see that coordination because I know in years past they were told to stay away from any kind of law enforcement issue, but I don't think that's a good idea. And I know you're working towards that goal, and I think that's a good way to go.
Mr. Cronin, do you have something else that you wanted to discuss?
No.
John?
You mentioned the marketing coordinator. One of her other duties that she's responsible for is volunteers. And volunteers in our park department have become very important, especially with the Boone Home. And so it takes, so it's not just marketing events, planning for new events, but it's also making sure that you have those volunteers and those people that can help interpret those events to the visitors that are coming in. And one of those I'll just mention this weekend we had Candlelight at Boone. Friday they had over 600 folks, and then on Saturday they had over 1,000. Once again, beating last year's record, beating the record that Lindenwood held previously. So getting folks there and making sure that you have volunteers is an important part of having a marketing coordinator, a volunteer coordinator in the department.
And then, John, on the camping, I noticed that the fees it shows that your overall, on camping revenue, it went down, but it should be going up. So why did we put the number? It's not a big number, but I'm just curious. On page 268, line, well, it's about in the middle. But again, to that point, you and I have talked about that it seems like the campgrounds are always full, and it seems like we don't charge very much. Have we considered doing a more, I'm not saying an excessive charge, but something instead of whatever, what is it, $10 or a cabin or something, or $20 or something? I mean, shouldn't it be a little bit more if they're full all the time?
So fees in general, I would expect in the first part of the next year, and it's not reflected in the budget, that the Parks Department will be looking at a revised fees table. They brought that to the council last year for discussion. The fees that are represented in this budget are identical to those that were established in 2017. When they looked at the market rates and comparing the fees that they were planning for 2018, was right about the time Betty was retiring. And so instead of presenting those as part of this year's budget numbers, the thought would be that we'd let Ryan have his input in those fees that we recommend. But I do expect that you'll see a bill in the first few months of 2018 reflecting some new fees on the shelters, camping, and these other items that we have for rental for the council's input.
Any further questions from anyone?
Just for the record, we did provide last year the 5-year plan to the council. So you did ask for that. It was submitted. It was a financial plan. It didn't have a lot of detail into the description, but it provided the dollar amount so that you could see going out 20 years, which parks were in the hopper and how much money would be allocated for that. Now, over the course of this last year, they have refined that a little bit and put together, working with communications department, what they're calling a strategic long-term vision that builds into a lot more details to what those dollar amounts mean and the type of development that would occur within those dollars. That vision is being reviewed by also the new director, be presented to the county administration, the county executive, and brought to the council, hopefully again in the first couple months of 18, so that you have a bigger picture of, with a little more detail than just the financial piece of it that was presented last year.
I don't remember. I thought Mike Klinghammer that we weren't, it wasn't what we were looking for when they delivered that, was it?
It wasn't. Go ahead.
It wasn't, and I think John referenced that it didn't have the detail that that we had talked about, and I think they're working on getting us a more.
John, when can you suspect that you'll have a 5-year plan that's really what we're looking for, just a 5-year outlay of what you're going to do or what the plan is? When would you suspect you have that?
It has been prepared. So the financial piece that was provided last year, and then the more detailed part of each park and where it lines up and the dollars and balancing, that's all been prepared. It's just really getting a chance for Ryan to provide his input into it. And once we work through that, I see it in the first couple months of next year. So February.
Yeah, February?
Joe,
Yeah.
that plan, and I assisted with that, that plan initially laid out a projection of what dollars, in the end, what dollars do we really have for capital improvements in the parks and park development. And it's laid out in kind of a zero-sum game to where if you move up one park's development, then something else is going to have to be delayed. So it identified the amount of capital that's available for development, and with certain assumptions about growth of personnel and increased costs and how much use tax revenues go up each year, or hopefully, that kind of thing. So that's plan from the standpoint of dollars and cents is largely in place. I think, are you talking more about what are we actually going to do in the next 5 years? Is that what you're after?
I understand it's fluid. I understand that, because if a piece of property comes up, we buy it, then it changes the numbers. I get all that, but I'm just saying it would be nice to see a plan so the council members have an idea. If constituents say, well, what are you guys doing with that piece of ground that's been bought for 5 years? It's just sitting there. Well, we plan on developing that 2019 or whatever. Just so we have an idea what the plan is. Otherwise, we really don't know, and we're just leaving it up to the Parks Department, which is okay to a degree, but it really isn't. It should be the council's and the executive's decision, I think.
Mr. Ellman?
Yeah, on that issue, I think if you prepare something, what it's going to be based on what we have now.
Right.
But if we get Spring Bend, I think changes the whole thing.
Right.
Another example, I figured New Melly would kind of be at the bottom of the list, but once we bought that house out there, that, we need to do something with that house, because that can actually start generating revenue for us. And I've asked Ryan to go ahead by January to give me a plan on just getting that, what we can do out there without spending a lot of money, get the house open so people will actually get out there and see it. We've talked about, we're going to cut the fairways again. We don't have to spend a whole lot of money to get it in the kind of shape where people can enjoy it.
Right.
But again, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, as far as I was concerned, New Melly was going to have to wait. But every time we do something, it kind of affects everything else.
I remember when we took over the Lindenwood Park, and we were having that discussion, we sat down and went through a full, I believe it was a 5 to 7 year financial plan. And we looked at the incoming money for the parks. We looked at what this park at Kisker Pittman is going to cost us to develop, what the outlay of that was going to be. And then Mr. Klinghammer found the piece of ground that was available up in North St. Charles and looking at developing that area as a new park. And I know we looked at, when we were taking over Lindenwood, we were looking at additional personnel costs that Mike had pointed out wasn't figured into the parks budget at that point. So we had that. I guess the part that I would ask you to come back to parks with is specifically, what do you want to see? Because we have the financial part that's been laid out. What we may not have is something else of what you're looking at, like in terms of if we get Spring Bend, what are we going to do in that park? Is that what you're looking for? Or
Yeah, just
Hayes House, if that gets developed, what are we going to do with
We're
Hayes
doing it
House?
now,
But that's what I'm asking.
So no, what I'm asking you is have a 5-year plan, and all know that it's going to change. It always does. They all do. But we have a conversation, then you will say, I want this by this part, but then if we buy this for $1 million, then it'll move this, and that's fine. But we got to have a layout so we can have the conversation. Right now, we just kind of wing it. We don't have you know what I'm saying? So if we have a plan, we can forecast, and I think it would make more sense.
So that plan, as I mentioned earlier, has been prepared. It's sitting in the draft form. We just need to get the new director's input on it. We'll present it to the council in the first part of the year. The capital plan that was approved a few months ago by the council laid out all those dollars. So it laid out the what if and provided dollars for Spring Bend. It laid out money for the park along the Mississippi River, laid out dollars for New Melly. So it took in consideration a lot of those things that are built into our 5-year capital plan that was approved by the council a few months ago. The actual details of the strategic plan of what the amenities could be in each of these parks, and it's a what if. It's a document that's sitting on my desk that's been prepared in draft form, but Ryan, we need to get his input on it to make sure that it lines up with what, at least give him the opportunity to provide that input so that he feels comfortable presenting it to you and feels that it is the right use based upon his knowledge and direction that he'd like to see. But like I said, the basic format of that document's already been prepared, and I want to thank Mary for her help of putting a lot of time into making it a document that's readable and also provides a little more information and visual information for those that would be able to see the plan.
Mr. Cronin.
I think through the years, county executive council at the time and Betty Ann Kramer did a real good job lining up a lot of park properties for future development. Okay, we bought the land when the opportunity was there and it made sense. But now we're faced with a really nice wish list of all these nice properties that we want and all these little amenities that we'd like to do. One thing I would like to see is something very similar to what we do with road projects. I would like to see Ryan and his staff prioritize which particular park project he thinks is most important. And same way, then I'd also like to see that same type of priority list run by the County Parks Board and see what they think is most important. Then that they could give that direction to the council so we could say, okay, this one's more important, let's get this one done first, and this one here is in Brazos District, we can do that in 2057. You see, so, I mean, if that makes any sense, I think that works awfully well with transportation, spreading out transportation money. I think it might be a good way to do parks as well. Okay?
Any further discussion on the budget? Yes.
I have one more, and I think it might be an opportune time if it's okay.
We have a few minutes.
All right. This past week, I think the Post-Dispatch did a bit of a hatchet job on the Health Services Department in regarding the article, and Hope is shaking her head yes. And regarding the article, the headline of the article was County Closes STD Clinics. And they cut her off before she had an opportunity to explain yes, but we're taking those same resources and we figured out better ways to serve our public, okay? So I've read the budget and you have the same number of full-time employees and pretty much the same budget numbers. So I would like, if possible, for Joanne or Hope to expand on that, give you the opportunity to say what the Post-Dispatch didn't give you the opportunity to say, if that's possible, okay?
Hello.
I'm going to apologize. I have a little bit of a cold, so.
You and everyone else in St. Louis right now, so there you go.
She's fine.
Is that a little better?
Yep.
I appreciate the opportunity to clarify some of the comments that were made in that article. The way that I'm looking at it is we're shutting down the existing model of our STD clinic. It's a little antiquated, it's a little outdated, it's a lot outdated, and the services that we get requested on a daily basis, we're not allowed to meet the demand based on the way that we're set up. So I think we have a really unique opportunity to kind of combine some services, reduce some services, drop some existing services that would allow us to continue with providing STD services and counseling, but additionally add all the different services that our clientele has been asking for years and years and years since I've been division director. As I've been tracking the different requests, we get hundreds upon hundreds of requests from our own county residents of items that we just simply can't provide with the staff given, with our budget given, and so forth. And I think now they'll be happily surprised to see that we'll be able to do a lot more for our community and meet their demands in a much better capacity that they're asking for.
Excellent.
The gist of it is, we have the same, if you read the article, you think the county was cutting employees, cutting costs, whatever. We're just as dedicated to public health. We have the same number of employees. We're spending the same amount of money. We're just letting our very intelligent, very smart health director and her staff figure out the best way to serve our residents. And that's the part of the story that didn't come out. I wanted to give you the opportunity to say that.
Well, and I really appreciate that. There is one position that is in the budget that we are not funding, but at the same time, the person that is in that position, there were other positions offered to that person. That decision lies within that person as to whether or not to take it or to retire at the end of the year. But that being said, I really do feel that the community will be happy with what we're about to offer them as well. I think that you'll be happy as well. Not sure what that was.
Mr. Chairman,
It's kind of scary, though. It's showing up.
I apologize for that. They're having some issues with the wind outside and the internal pressure of the building. Those are baffles on vents to the outside that are opening and closing. We're trying to regulate the pressure a little bit to
It's not the Phantom
stop
at the
that.
arena, right?
No,
so
it's
we're all
not.
good. All right. Mr. Elman.
Regarding that article, we call that fake news.
All right, anybody else? The one request that I would have, and I know this was referenced at the last meeting, Dave brought it up a little bit ago, is it seemed like there was a little confusion in the cost allocation discussion. So everything works better when we communicate better, right? So it seemed like that was the only thing that was kind of a real point of contention. If the cost allocation was going to be done, for the most part, I think people understood and accepted that. There was a little bit of surprise, it seems to be, that the conversation wasn't necessarily had in depth with people.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily have the heads up until they got the paperwork back.
We fully acknowledge that, and the cost allocation model was something that was adopted midstream. We will be looking at that model. We've already had discussions with Maximus about ways to refine that and address some of the issues, especially some of the issues Mr. Shipman brought to our attention. And so we'll have a better model. It will be in the introduced budget, and actually should be part of the budget information that departments get in mid-August as opposed to mid-November, or early November. So it'll be fully on board. It'll be a refined model, and a lot more communication will be part of the budget process next year.
Anything further? With that, I have a motion to dismiss.
Mr. Chairman, if you
No, I already
will-
said anything further.
Oh, thought you were on the budget. I apologize. This is not on the budget.
Okay.
At least not directly. I didn't know I've sent a couple of emails trying to keep you all apprised back to the beginning of November on the medical examiner situation. I didn't know if you had a little time, if you had any other questions. I know Councilman Cronin sent me a few here and there, and I've tried to respond to those, but,
Does anyone have any questions about the medical examiner position?
I think since we've got a former state public health employee working on this problem, I'm sure we'll have it taken care of, okay? So,
well, I was mental health, if you're talking about me.
okay.
That explains why you work well with us.
No.
So there you go.
Joanne had answered every question I had, and I think it's an opportunity to save the county a significant amount of money and still provide the services we have. So And I think it's also some good regional cooperation between 3 counties and maybe more counties to come on down the road. So I think it's a good thing.
I was just excited that Dr. Mary Case is going to be with us and stay with us. Because you could probably tell her qualifications better than anybody, but she's a fine who is a diamond for this region. I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit on her qualifications and kind of why she stands head and shoulders above so many, but we're lucky to have her talent involved with our county.
Right. Well, Dr. Case is not only a standout in the field, and by the way, the county executive will be sending her name forward for approval at the next meeting, so I hope that's a good sign that she'll be met with approval by the council. But not only is Dr. Case one of the finest general forensic pathologists in the nation, having testified and provided testimony in thousands upon thousands of murder trials and other criminal cases through the years. But in addition to that, she is one of probably 15 neuroforensic pathologists in the nation. So that she's located in St. Louis and that she's been willing to play the role with our 3 counties through those years and is willing to continue doing that now that we're going forward as a regional medical examiner office is just a real catch for the 3 counties to have somebody like that continue to head the program and to mentor the other younger forensic pathologists who are in that program. It's a major thing.
And not only in St. Louis, but St. Charles.
Right.
Not that I'm a homer or anything, but she does live here, not across the river.
And she does now reside in St. Charles County.
She does
That
reside
is
in
true.
St. Charles County. All right, now, do I have a motion to dismiss? Mr. White, before we
compliment all those that put this budget together, year after year. It comes before us, and all the hours that's put into it. I just appreciate all your hard work, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to dismiss?
So moves.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. What is this? This is the conditional use? Wow. So Debbie is going to come pray for us tonight. Beautiful.
You got a place reserved for her. That conditional, the bill itself is also in here. This is
Okay.
the bill. And then you're gonna address that table conditional use one because we got exhibit C.
I know.
So that one can be removed from the table, but it's up in the agenda, like up right past.
Here?
Yes.
All right, so what do I need to do with this?
So you're gonna, after that conditional, the big one, the big boy.
Okay.
Then you're gonna say this one is ready to go because we received the exhibit C, which was the findings and conclusions, so it's gotta be removed from the table because it was tabled.
Okay.
You're gonna have to have a motion to, second to remove.
All right, so here's what we need.
Okay. Beautiful.
What's